Hello, thank you for joining us today. Welcome to the Veterinary Services Grant Program Education, Extension, and Training, or EET, application overview. I'm Kathy Bjork, a veterinarian and the National Program Leader for Animal Health and Veterinary Medicine at NIFA. Today's presentation will also include Danielle Farley, a social scientist and program specialist at NIFA. Today, we will review the VSGP EET eligibility, application and review processes, accepting an award, and resources available to help you through the application process. The VSGP was authorized by the 2014 Farm Bill to make competitive grants available to qualified entities or individuals that carry out educational programs or services for the purpose of developing, implementing, and sustaining food animal veterinary services and relieving veterinarian shortage situations in the U.S. Funding is allocated each year for awards in two program areas: education, extension, and training, which we refer to as EET, and rural practice enhancement, which we refer to as RPE. The EET program area awards approximately 2/3 of the funds appropriated to the VSGP. Award amounts range from $75,000 to $250,000. This funding amount includes up to 30% for indirect costs. Activities for EET include covering expenses for attending training in food safety and food animal medicine, establishing or expanding accredited education programs, veterinary residencies and fellowships, or internships and externships, providing continuing education and extension needed to strengthen veterinary programs and enhance food safety. Note that these projects have a 3-year duration. The other VSGP program is Rural Practice Enhancement, or RPE. Approximately 1/3 of the appropriated funds for VSGP are allocated for RPE projects, with award amounts ranging from $75,000 to $125,000. RPE funds may be used to equip veterinary offices, share in reasonable overhead, which includes staffing, and establish mobile veterinary facilities. A portion of the facilities will address education or extension needs. This also requires a 3-year service commitment to a shortage area.
Eligible applicants for the EET program include U.S. veterinary colleges or schools that are accredited by AVMA's Council on Education, AVMA accredited veterinary technician schools or programs, a state, national, or allied food animal veterinary professional organization, such as the American Association of Bovine Practitioners, recognized by the AVMA, and departments of veterinary science associated with state agricultural experiment stations affiliated with 1862 land grant institutions, or research farms affiliated with 1890 land grant institutions. Please note that applications focused on research or graduate programs will not be funded. VSGP is intended to focus on education and training activities. If you or your institution are interested in research activities, please visit the NIFA program's webpage or contact program staff for more information. This slide provides an overview of the application process for the Education, Extension, and Training Program area. Applicants are encouraged to obtain the Data Universal Numbering System, or DUNS number, and register for a unique entity ID with the System for Award Management, or SAM, as soon as possible, even if you haven't decided if you will apply yet. Please note that DUNS numbers will no longer be required after April 2nd, 2022. After this transition, applicants will only need the unique entity ID with SAM. These are required for the application process, and obtaining them can take a few weeks. Waiting too long to initiate this step could delay your ability to submit your application by the deadline. Ensure when registering for a SAM account that you register as an entity doing business with the federal government. This process requires more information and takes longer than just obtaining a login to an online system. Once you have a DUNS number and a SAM account, register with grants.gov and enter the funding opportunity number for VSGP, which is available on the RFA. You can then download the application package. It is important that you have the required version of Adobe Reader compatible with grants.gov and that all attached documents are in PDF format. After reviewing your application package for completeness, submit to NIFA no later than the deadline on the current RFA. We encourage you to start the application process early to ensure any problems with technology do not impact your submission. We will not cover details of working within grants.gov in today's webinar. NIFA provides an array of resources that provide instructions for how to navigate grants.gov. We encourage all interested applicants to review the steps needed to apply for any NIFA grant and the NIFA training module that provides new applicants a guide for using grants.gov. These links can be easily accessed at the VSGP applicants webpage noted at the bottom of this slide. One of the most important documents of your application is the project narrative. For EET grants, the narrative is limited to 12 pages and allows for 3 additional pages for figures and tables. Refer to the RFA for line, spacing, and font size requirements. This table provides a suggestion for the sections that should be addressed in the narrative and the approximate number of pages of written text to dedicate to each section. The third column annotates the review criteria that panelists will consider in your narrative. This table is in the RFA, and we encourage you to reference the RFA for additional details on what should be included in each section. We will include a detailed overview of each of the evaluation criteria later in this webinar.
In the problem identification section, you should clearly state the specific problem to be addressed and its importance and relevance to food animal veterinary shortages. The recommendation is to use roughly 1 page for this section, which will be evaluated on relevancy to veterinary education and training, to stakeholders, and to mitigating veterinary shortages, in line with VSGP priorities. Include a clear statement of the long-term goals and supporting objectives of the proposed activities in the introduction and background section. Summarize the body of knowledge or other past activities that substantiate the need for the proposed project. Describe ongoing or recently completed significant activities that relate to the proposed project, including the work of key project personnel. Include preliminary data or information pertinent to the proposed project. Refer to the RFA for in-depth information to include when applicable, including estimates of the magnitude of the issues to be addressed and their relevance to livestock producers and other stakeholders, the role of public and private stakeholders in problem identification, planning, implementation, and evaluation, the reasons for the work being done by the proposed entity or entities. The recommendation is to use roughly 1.5 pages for the introduction and background section, which will be evaluated on relevancy as noted previously, as well as expertise, experience, and institutional resources. In the objectives section, include a clear statement of the goals and supporting objectives of the proposed activities. All applications must include a statement regarding overarching aims and goals and corresponding specific objectives of the proposed effort in clear, concise, complete, and logically arranged terms. For example, describe what is expected to be accomplished in each of the 3 years of the grant project period. Objectives should focus on the project period and may also consider any potential long-term impacts beyond the period of funding. The recommendation is to use roughly 1 page for the objective section, which will be evaluated on relevancy and technical merit. The methods section is the largest section of your project narrative. Your approach should focus on proposed activities. Explicitly describe the strategies, tactics, and/or business plan you will employ using the resources specifically acquired through support from this grant to achieve your stated goals and objectives. Refer to the RFA for specific examples of what to include in this section. Where applicable, this section may include, but not necessarily be limited to, descriptions of stakeholder involvement in problem identification, planning, implementation, and evaluation. If applicable, plans for coordination and collaboration with other qualified entities and their roles and responsibilities. Proposed project activities. Techniques to be employed in this project, including their feasibility and rationale. Plans to communicate results to stakeholders and the public. Pitfalls that might be encountered, and limitations. The recommendation is to use roughly 4 pages for the approach section, which will be evaluated on technical merit, collaborations, and achievability.
In the evaluation section, you should explicitly state the outputs and outcomes expected from the proposed project. Explain the data gathering procedures, qualitative or quantitative, that will be used to monitor and assess progress toward intended project outcomes. When describing the measurement instruments you plan to use, such as surveys, interviews, focus groups, measures of class performance, cost-benefit analysis, be sure to mention why they are appropriate for gauging success. Evaluation plans must contain baseline data when available or describe how baseline data will be obtained for monitoring outcomes. A plan for tracking students and trainees after graduation and/or to assess the communities they will be serving to measure impact your project has on addressing shortage situations should be described. Finally, the evaluation plan should contain measures of the following: student trainee learning or engagement, the number of students, trainees, teachers impacted by your project as a result of the proposed activities, the number of students, trainees serving or planning to serve veterinary shortage situations, and return on investment, the trainees' impacts for relieving veterinary shortage situations. The recommendation is to allocate roughly 2 pages for the evaluation section, which will be evaluated on technical merit. It is critical to have a clearly articulated management plan that describes the roles and functions of all key personnel and, where applicable, partners, collaborators, and organizations as related to the proposed project. For projects proposing coordination between 2 or more entities, include time allocated by each partner for attainment of objectives, key roles of each partner and collaborator, and a plan for administration of the proposed project. Describe the plans for coordination, communication, data sharing, and reporting among members of the project team and stakeholder groups. Describe the commitment of the organization and partners to this project, and how the collaboration and its impact will be sustained beyond the period of the award. An applicant's failure to provide the requested information in the management and collaboration plan may preclude NIFA from making an award. The recommendation is to allocate roughly 2 pages for the management and collaboration plan section, which will be evaluated on achievability, expertise, experience, and institutional resources. The timetable section of your project narrative should outline important phases and major milestones as a function of time, year by year for the entire project, including years beyond the grant funding period. The timetable must meet the minimum 3-year commitment. This section can be provided in paragraph form or in a well-organized table. The recommendation is to allocate roughly a half of a page for the project timetable section, which will be evaluated on achievability. EET applicants have the option to submit an additional 3 pages for facts and figures to support the project narrative. Any facts and figures included in your proposal must be relevant to the proposed project. Please note that extended narratives in these 3 pages will be rejected.
The budget justification is your opportunity to itemize how funds will be used with a brief description for specific activities or equipment. The budget justification must not exceed 5 pages. This includes written text, pictures, and numbers. Refer to the RFA for line spacing and font size requirements. The page limits outlined here ensure fair and equitable competition. For projects proposing partnering, collaboration, or coordination, letters of commitment should be included from all participating parties, stating that the collaborators involved have agreed to the roles described in the project narrative and have agreed to abide by the management and collaboration plan. Letters from other organizations or people whose participation is important to the success of the project, committing those collaborators to specific roles, are also encouraged. Letters of commitment must be signed by a representative from each key partner. Title the attachments as, quote, letter of commitment / organization name in the document header, and save the file as letter of commitment organization name. Other more general partnerships, such as those who are not committing to a specific role in the project, are not needed and should not be included. A data management plan is required when applying for this grant. The data collected should support the anticipated results and reporting of outcomes. Applicants should clearly articulate how the project director, or PD, and co-PDs plan to manage and disseminate the data generated by the project. The data management plan will be considered during the merit review process. The data management plan can be as short as 1 paragraph, but no longer than 1 page. The data management plan must be attached as a PDF with your application materials and must include a description of the data format, which is at the discretion of the project director, the data storage and preservation. It must be stored securely with adequate measures taken for the length of the program and 3 years after the grant end date. You must describe plans for storing and preserving the data during and after the project. Include any strategies, tools, and contingency plans that will be used to avoid data loss, degradation, or damage. Data sharing, protection, and public access. Include a statement, when applicable, of plans to protect confidentiality, personal privacy, proprietary interests, business confidential information, and intellectual property rights. And roles and responsibility. State who will implement the data management plan. EET examples include, for education, the number of students enrolled or who participated, course enhancements and training projects. For extension, outreach materials, number of stakeholders reached, number of activities, and assessment questionnaires.
If you submitted this application in the past and were declined an award, you are required to submit a response to previous review and must check box 8, resubmission, on the SF 424 form. The response to previous review must not exceed 1 page, titled Response to Previous Review and saved as Response to Previous Review. This is your opportunity to respond to any weaknesses or flaws identified by reviewers and should include how, if appropriate, you have made adjustments based on the previous panel's review. If desired, additional comments may be included in the text of the project narrative to the page limitations that you are to adhere to. The response to previous review must be saved as a PDF and uploaded as an additional document with your application. Here we offer guidance on how to avoid common errors for EET applications. First, all attachments in your application must be in PDF format. It is important to disable any security features with your PDF, such as password protection and editing restrictions. File names should be 50 characters or less and should not include special characters. Do not include headers or footers in any of your documents. Late applications for a unique entity ID with SAM could prevent you from applying by the application deadline. We encourage applicants to start this process early. We encourage you to use section headings as part of your project narrative text. Consider the subsections of the project narrative that we reviewed earlier. These can be subheadings. Lastly, please follow the guide for fonts, margins, and page limitations as detailed in the RFA. Once you submit your application with grants.gov, you will receive an email confirmation that it was received. You will also receive various emails from grants.gov that will inform you whether your application passed validation checks and is being sent on to our agency, or if your application did not pass the validation check and was rejected. If you submit early, any rejection issues can be addressed, and applications can be resubmitted before the application deadline.
After NIFA receives all applications, a three-part evaluation process begins. In the initial screening, the first step in the review process is conducted by NIFA staff to ensure compliance and completeness of the grant application. Ineligible applicants, incomplete applications, and late applications will not be considered for peer review. Additionally, budgets proposed outside of the $75,000 to $250,000 range for EET projects will not be reviewed. After the initial screening, applicants will receive a letter of confirmation or rejection. Next, applications that pass the initial screening will move to the peer review process. Here, applications will be evaluated for content based on the review criteria listed in the RFA by an external peer review panel composed of veterinary subject matter experts. Once the panel recommends applications for funding and NIFA leadership approves the recommendations, they will go through the last stage of the review process. The administrative review is conducted by NIFA Awards Management Division. They will determine when funds can be issued. This will be no later than September 30th. EET applications have 4 elements for their peer review criteria. First, relevancy and innovation are weighted at 20% of the peer review. The panel of peer reviewers will look for an explanation and documentation that the proposed project is directed towards relieving food animal veterinary shortages and is innovative or novel in its approach. Technical merit is weighted at 50% of the peer review. Details for technical merit are clearly outlined in the RFA. Achievability is weighted at 20%. This involves the probability of success of the project given the level of originality, target audience, and budget for each activity. Importance will be given to description of potential pitfalls and how they will be addressed. Lastly, EET grants will be reviewed for expertise, experience, and institutional resources. This includes the expertise of consultants and collaborators, sufficiency of the educational facilities and equipment for the proposed education and outreach methods. Importance will be given to the demonstration of expertise through successful multi-year experience in education, outreach, and mentoring, and/or technical assistance in veterinary medicine supporting agriculture. Again, additional details for each of these 4 review criteria are provided in the RFA. In general, here are a few points for writing a proposal that will make a good impression on reviewers. Know your audience, who and where the people are who you propose to train, their needs, and how you will meet their needs through education and training. Propose a solid work plan that is ambitious but achievable. Lastly, focus on results and impacts. Describe what impacts you expect as a result of your training and project. This should be clearly outlined in your evaluation plan. We want to remind you that there are a variety of resources available for your guidance on the VSGP webpage as you put your application together. The RFA will be your best resource for instructions and details to include in your application. The recorded program overview webinar provides information on the intent of the program. Our annual and historical reports include information about previous funded projects, and our fact sheet provides an overview of the program. Lastly, our VSGP team is a resource for you. We truly enjoy connecting with applicants and welcome the opportunity to answer your questions, meet with you virtually, or speak with you over the phone. We are available upon request. Please feel free to reach out via email at vsgp@usda.gov or use the contact information located in the RFA. Thank you for joining us, and we look forward to working with you as you develop your EET projects.